Imagine a pool of slithering, genetically altered serpents that were never meant for a park, or a predator with a cold, calculated mind of a raptor, but the anatomy of something, well, multi-legged. For decades, InGen was hiding its most disturbing failures on a forgotten island known only as Site C, a place where the laws of nature were completely shattered, and today we're opening these redacted files and we're going to start with small-scale horrors, and then we're going to move on and escalate to creatures so massive it was deemed too dangerous to even exist, and that was called the gargantuan Spinosaurus, and yes, it is canon to Jurassic. And trust me, by the time we reach level 5, you'll realize the dinosaurs were only the beginning. Our descent into Site C begins not with a roar, but with a ripple. Specifically, focusing on a series of industrial pools filled with, well, something slithering. Whilst many people have speculated this was just simply a prehistoric snake, or even just a snake in general, this is an InGen island, and InGen's history suggests something much more deliberate. And by this point in the movie, various animals, mutants, and everything had escaped into the island. In the original Site C manifest, there were actual records of localized biological security, creatures designed not for public display, but for containment. You see, this facility didn't just have electrified fences, but the very water that surrounds the labs is a living, breathing deterrent. You see, by editing the genetic code of regular snakes, hell, even bringing back a titanoboa, they could breed a serpent that was faster, more aggressive, and most importantly, completely silent. They represent the first tier of the Site C philosophy here. If it doesn't look like a dinosaur, it's pretty easy to hide. If it's easy to hide, you can basically do whatever you want with it. But as disturbing as sharing the water with these pool serpents are, they were only meant to guard the surface. You see, level 2 is going to take us even further, a testing ground for a creature that was too unstable for the public eye, and that is the InGen Mosasaurus. But not just the Mosa, there was another dinosaur, which I'll get onto in a second. You see, Site C obviously held a huge aquatic facility, hence how they made this Mosasaurus, which escaped out into the ocean. It's important to note this is completely different to the other Mosasaurus we see in Jurassic World. But the really odd thing I found here, that there was another dinosaur which was featured in Camp Cretaceous Season 4 and 5, and seemed to poof up from nowhere, and that was the Nothosaurus. InGen and Manticorp are treated as a disposable prototype. I'd always wondered how Manticorp got their hands on this specimen, and it's quite obvious. By 2010, the facility on Site C had shut down because of all the dinosaurs that had escaped. Well, the mutants. It's highly likely that Manticorp had poached dinosaurs off of this island, thus how they acquired the Nothosaurus. You see, what makes Nothosaurus a true Site C horror isn't just the speed we see, it's the temperament. In the canon of Camp Cretaceous, this creature was depicted as an absolute ruthless predator. It didn't follow predictable hunting patterns of a raptor or a rex, it was chaotic. And it was semi-aquatic. It's likely that this Nothosaurus was never intended for a park attraction. It looks kind of unpolished and way too aggressive to contain, and, as Hammond and Masrani said, things which were too ugly aesthetically would never make it into a park. Thus, it was a biological dead end, a creature left to rot in the shadows. But if the Mosa and the Notho were too much for them to handle, then how did they manage the creature in level 3? Because this was the version 23 we've seen, the version 23 D-Rex. And these are specific trials related to the D-Rex. You see, this is the moment where InGen starts playing God. The D-Rex was never intended to be a T-Rex clone, it was intended to be a weapon, designed for the battlefield, using a cocktail of DNA that included, wait for this, human trials. It has to be, right? I mean, they've clearly taken inspiration from the cancelled Jurassic Park 4 movie here. They never intended to create a T-Rex. I mean, they already had one in Ember, and they already had one on Isla Nublar with Rexy. No, this is a restricted section type of predator with the loyalty and tactical intelligence of a human soldier, but the lethality of a raptor. The results of these trials, though, was a creature that was mentally fractured and an abomination that understood its own existence was a mistake. Similar to the Scorpius Rex we see, but very different in other ways. This version 23 of the D-Rex represents the absolute peak of moral depravity that was InGen, and it's why Site C had to exist. Because you can't put a creature like this with human adjacent consciousness in a petting zoo in Jurassic World. It was a failure in the highest order and a nightmare that was never meant to exist. InGen were cooking up some pretty horrific things in their lab. I mean, using human and dinosaur DNA together resulted in that. But as haunting as the D-Rex trials were on a psychological level, they were still limited by their size. That's where the oceans come into play, specifically the deep oceans, and we have to look towards the monsters that were deemed too ancient for a modern world. Level 4 is a nightmare of scale, deep within the lagoons of Site C, which we see many of. InGen didn't just stop at the Mosasaurus, they went further back into the age of super predators. We're talking about the Megalodon and the armored titan of the Dunkleosteus. They were seeing how far back could they go? Could they bring back super predators from the deepest oceans? We all know that you can't keep a great white shark in captivity. Various zoos have tried, and for whatever reason, they just die within a few weeks. The same would probably be true by the Megalodon, or the Megalodon escaped the facility. I mean, we know Megalodons were out in the ocean in Rebirth because we see the jaws in the bar, well, the dive bar specifically. Duncan even references this directly. Not to mention, we see the Dunkleosteus being fished up by fishermen. How did that get out in the ocean? Simple. From this Site C. Exactly the same as the Mosa we talked about earlier on. I mean, to keep these levels of aquatic animals, you need a high-pressure containment system that would be impossible to maintain for a park. I mean, they barely kept the Mosasaurus contained in Jurassic World. You imagine trying to keep a Megalodon and a Dunkleosteus, 3 super predators potentially, in a lagoon. It would not happen. These are animals that had a bite force that could snap a submarine in half. These were the apex aquatic animals that InGen had probably deemed too prehistoric or difficult to manage, and frankly, too efficient at probably killing things. But even these ancient titans look like minnows compared to the final entry in our list. We reached the top of the clearance apart from one bonus creature, which will be at the end of this, and whew, that will blow you away. But this creature is so massive, it was scrubbed from the history books before it even could take its first breath. Prepare yourselves for level 5. While the franchise has given us obviously the Spinosaurus of Isla the smaller Spinosaurus we see in Rebirth, I'm giving you something far worse. A conceptual art image more terrifying than the original story. This is the gargantuan Spinosaurus. This wasn't just the bigger version of the animal we know, this was a genetic experiment pushed to its absolute breaking point here. In the Site C files, the gargantuan was designed to be a literal world-eating creature. I don't know why they'd want to make this, but there you have it. It was a creature so massive that its very presence would have collapsed the ecosystem of any island, and it was the ultimate expression of InGen's God complex, creating life that the world itself wasn't large enough to hold. Now I know you're probably thinking, how is this canon to Jurassic? Well, this was actually planned instead of the Mosasaurus, but instead they scrubbed it from the history books. Its genetic code allegedly burned after the scientists realized they hadn't created a park attraction. It was something far worse. The gargantuan Spinosaurus is the final proof that Site C was running far more than just dinosaur experiments here. The dinosaurs were just the beginning. The real horrors have always been there. We just had to know where to look. And this is where I'd like you to look at this image on screen right now. That to me looks like a Dilophosaurus, but not like the Dilophosaurus we usually see. It looks far bigger in my eyes. Were they creating some type of Dilophosaurus way bigger than what we'd seen on screen? Was this the blueprint for a new type of Dilophosaurus we're yet to see on the screen, but was on Site C? Looking at the original concept art for the island and the labs on Site C, well, you can see that these vats are absolutely massive. And if they start off that large as babies, I can only imagine what would be in these vats, these test tubes. Is this how the TREX was born? Is it another side to Site C we are yet to see? Another room, perhaps, where they furthered their cloning technology? Perhaps this gargantuan Spinosaurus was bred there. The TREX was bred there. Hell, maybe even a Titanoboa or other Cenozoic animals, such as the saber-toothed tiger we've seen in Camp Cretaceous. And let's not forget, Site C's story isn't finished yet. The TREX still survives on that island at the end of Rebirth. I believe the story of Site C and everything else on it isn't finished there. From the serpents in the pool to the titan that never was, I think InGen's history is written in the DNA of its monsters. But what do you think? Was the gargantuan Spinosaurus a mistake, or was that a goal all along? Let me know your theories in the comments below. If you want to continue with hidden and restricted animals, I highly recommend checking this video out here, what was in Jurassic World restricted section, the series of what was in the restricted section, and many other videos. Massive thanks to the InGen research team who are on screen now, and if you came across this gigantic Spinosaurus out in the open, could you take it any worse? You bet Jurassic can. Catch you later.